Welcome back to another MECH 1000 video. We are still in Unit 16 of our blueprint reading textbook and looking at weld symbols. So we introduced the basics of what a weld symbol is. On this slide we have a few additional symbols, some of which we've already mentioned. The all-around symbol, the flags here to indicate field weld. Here are a few new ones. This type of semicircle filled in solid indicates to melt through. And then some of the finish symbols, as I mentioned earlier, that you may see actually on top of the weld symbol itself. A straight line to indicate flush, that it should be flush after the weld has been laid down, or can you leave it convex or concave? So those indicate basically the shape of the joint after the weld has been applied. So you can see here, this table has lots of different symbols. We've got a fillet on the arrow side, fillet on the other side, fillet on both sides, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through the whole chart here, but we've looked at these symbols. We know that the rectangle is a plug or slot. The two lines here indicate a square groove, V groove, bevel, U groove, J groove. Those are the ones that we're primarily concerned with, the more common ones. So let's start looking at some examples here. So let's see what information can we gather from this symbol. What is this telling us? Well, the triangle shape is telling us that this is a fillet weld. So it's fillet. It's on the bottom side of the reference line, so that means it's arrow side. And that's really it. That's all that symbol tells us. That's a pretty basic symbol. And there we go, fillet weld, arrow side. Let's look at the next one. Okay, so here we have the symbol both above and below the reference line. So this is both sides. And these two parallel lines indicate square groove. So this is a square groove both sides. Next. Okay, we've got a little bit more information on this. So we have triangle shape that indicates that it's a fillet weld. We also have the size of the fillet weld, 0.50. So this means that our fillet weld here is 0.50. That's how big the fillet weld is. It's below the reference line, so it's on the arrow side. And we also have the flag here that indicates it is a field weld. All right, now we're going to draw the symbols ourselves. So for A, we want a fillet weld on both sides. So that means we're going to have a fillet weld symbol below and above. So it looks something like that. And what that means is we're going to put in a fillet weld on this side and on the other side, both sides like that. Next, B, we want a fillet weld all around. So this looks like it's a cylinder attached to the side of this plate. So if we put a fillet weld on the arrow side, and we want it to go all around. So that means we've got a fillet weld that's going to go all the way around this cylinder. So that fillet weld is going to go all the way around like that. C, we want a V-groove weld on the arrow side. Okay, so on the arrow side, a V-groove is actually an upside down V. And then we want to grind it flush. So we're going to put a flush symbol. Actually, since it's on the arrow side, the flush symbol goes below it instead of on top. And we can use the letter G to represent grind. So we want to grind it flush. And then on the opposite side, we want a fillet weld. So it would look like that. So what we're saying is on this side where the arrow is pointing to, we are going to prepare the joint ahead of time with a V-shaped groove. Then we're going to fill it in with our weld material and make sure that we grind it flush when we're done. And on the opposite side, we're going to add a fillet weld. So it's going to look something like that. And finally, D, we have a J-groove weld, both sides, and then a fillet weld on top of that. So you can do that. You can put down one weld and then put another weld on top of it. So we're going to start off with a J groove weld on both sides. So that would indicate that we'd probably have something like that filled in on both sides. And then put a fillet weld on top of that. So we're going to extend this vertical line and add a fillet weld on the top and on the bottom, on the arrow side and the opposite side as well. Okay, and that brings us to the end of Unit 16. This is the last blueprint reading unit of the semester. So you've made it. We've made it to the end. Again, if you've got any questions, I encourage you to use the Blackboard discussion board or ask those questions when I see you next in class. See you then.